2016 Rio Olympics super heavyweight silver medalist Joyce moves to 8-0 as a professional with a 6-round TKO of former WBC world heavyweight champion Bermane Stiverne. I've seen a lot of negative comments about Joyce's performance. A lot of people writing him off at world level or, even fringe world level after this. Personally, I don't know what they were expecting. Were they expecting Joyce to not get a hit at all? As I said in my pre-fight videos, Joyce's style actually plays in to Bermane Stiverne's strengths. Stiverne likes guys who come at him. He likes guys who want to pressure and take it to him at close quarters. Stiverne is naturally a back foot counterpuncher. That's where he performs best. Stiverne's issues are always when he has to deal with a much taller opponent who forces him to go forward and try and close the distance. That's where Stiverne is woefully inadequate. But if you're going to close Stiverne down and you're going to try and swap shots with him at close range, he's going to start landing. And that's what happened against Joyce. He landed some heavy artillery on Joyce in the first round, and Joyce took the shots very well and continued firing back until Bermane Stiverne stopped punching altogether, eventually by the 6th, and the fight was waved off. Stiverne was down in the 3rd, and he was rocked on multiple occasions. Joyce varies the weight of his punches, so he wasn't always punching with full power, but he was keeping steady, consistent pressure on his opponent. But the times when Stiverne was seriously hurt, it's when Joyce managed to catch Stiverne slightly off guard, where he was able to get a clean right hand that would land on the side of Bermane Stiverne's head or the side of his jaw. That's when he was able to hurt him. But when he was punching through Stiverne's guard, Stiverne was taking the shots fairly well. He was braced for him, he was expecting him, he was taking him well. It's just there was a couple times that Stiverne was caught slightly unawares. The shots you don't see are the ones that hurt you the most. And I know it's difficult to believe that you wouldn't see a Joyce punch because they're so unbelievably slow, but he did a couple of times catch Stiverne when Stiverne wasn't ready for the shot. So, you go have a rewatch of the fight and you'll see what I'm saying. So I wasn't alarmed. I wasn't surprised by Joyce getting clipped because stylistically it was going to happen. It's just, how was Joyce going to react to getting clipped? That's the only question in my mind, because Stiverne can punch. For all his faults, for the fact that he is horrifically out of shape at this stage of his career, he can still bang. And to me, it was the only question in the fight is what happens when Joyce gets clipped. I always felt he'd probably be able to take the shots because he has a reputation for having a good chin. He did from the amateurs. He did from those countless rounds of sparring, the likes of Anthony Joshua. So I kind of took it on good faith that Joyce would be able to take Stiverne's punches. The fact he got clipped did not surprise me. It didn't shock me. Joyce is never going to be a defensive wizard. He's never going to be a fancy Dan. He's always going to be clunky. He's always going to be slow, but he's always going to have physical strength, fitness, and pretty good punching power. He has been likened to George Foreman, including by myself, in terms of the way he moves, because Foreman was big and clunky and awkward looking. The way he would throw his punches was very unorthodox and unconventional and ugly, to tell the truth. Joyce moves in a very similar way to a young George Foreman, but he doesn't appear to have the same brute power that Foreman had. But I'm certainly not going to call Joyce feather-fisted. I think he is heavy-handed. He just doesn't set himself the way a young George Foreman did sometimes. George Foreman didn't always set himself. There was a lot of arm punches, even from a young George Foreman. But sometimes he would set himself and really let go with ridiculously hard punches, anchor himself to the canvas, and throw uppercuts, particularly with devastating effect. We saw that against Joe Frazier, where he was teeing off with all these uppercuts against Frazier, really anchoring himself to the canvas and getting maximum leverage. We also saw it against Joe Roman. Any of you who haven't seen that fight, it doesn't last long. Vicious punches from George Foreman, anchoring himself to the canvas and just wailing away with wide hooks until Joe Roman is sprawled out on the canvas. Joe Joyce hasn't demonstrated that ability to really anchor himself to the canvas and get maximum purchase on his punches, but he has shown pretty decent heavy-handedness, as we saw against Joe Hanks and as we saw here against Bermane Stiverne. Yes, Stiverne got cleaned out in one round by Deontay Wilder, but that's the only time he's been cleaned out. He was stopped earlier on in his career by, what's the guy's name? Is it Demetrius? I think Demetrius King, who is a big African-American journeyman who stopped Stiverne early on in Stiverne's career. Stiverne never went down in that fight. He was stopped on his feet. I've seen it. So the only time that Stiverne's ever been down, to my knowledge, was in the Deontay Wilder rematch and in the fight that he had against Derek Rossi, where he did get dropped as well, to be fair. But other than that, he's never been on the canvas. 2 fights with Variola, never touched down. The first fight against Deontay Wilder, took a lot of shots, never touched down. So his durability may have waned, but it's never been bad. He's always been a pretty tough heavyweight, Bermane Stiverne. So the fact that Joyce was able to drop him, wobble him quite a few times, I think it shows Stiverne does have some power there. Some pretty decent heavy-handed power. And maybe that's something him and his new trainer, Abel Sanchez, could work on. You see, different trainers have got a different philosophy and have got a different way of dealing with particular fighters. If I was advising or training Joe Joyce, I would try and get him to maximize his punching power. That's what I would do. I know his thing is the work rate, and that's something Abel Sanchez is trying to bring out of him, apparently, according to the ITV commentators. Ronald McIntosh was saying that Abel Sanchez wants Joe Joyce to throw loads of punches and be aggressive and crowd pleasing and all this kind of stuff. If it was me, I would personally work on Joyce's power, just maximizing his power, because I think he's naturally heavy-handed, this guy. And if you got him to sit down on his punches more and, really learn how to turn his hips into the shots and get maximum purchase, that would be the way I would go. And I would continue to develop his jab. That's one thing I was very happy about in this fight, is that he was using his jab a lot more. He's going to need that, because if you are a slow heavyweight, a slow, clunky heavyweight like a Joyce, the jab is going to be your best friend if you're hoping to move up through the world rankings. The jab's going to be essential for you. Frank Bruno, although he wasn't an awkward heavyweight, he was a very slow, robotic heavyweight, but his jab was very, very good. And we saw against the likes of Tim Witherspoon and much later on in his career against Lennox Lewis, him have a lot of success with that ramrod left jab. A very, very good punch. In fact, Lennox Lewis was known for having a great jab, but his jab was eclipsed by Frank Bruno's jab in their fight. And Lennox Lewis was a much more athletically gifted fighter than Frank Bruno. Much faster, much more supple and agile, taller. But Bruno's very solid, accurate jab gave Lewis all types of problems in that fight. If Joe Joyce can cultivate a similar kind of jab, where it's just strong and solid and reliable, I think it will really, really help him. So I would actually go with the whole George Foreman model if I was advising or training Joe Joyce, and try and pattern him on that. I know Abel Sanchez has talked about George Foreman, and maybe that's what Abel Sanchez is doing to some degree. But when you're training someone for power, the work rate is going to have to come down. Yeah, when you are 265 pounds, there is no way you're going to be able to have, ridiculous work rate if you're throwing with maximum power. So I wouldn't take away his work rate completely, but I would bring it down a little bit and go for quality rather than quantity. Okay, because as I say, he's very strong. He has a great presence in the ring. If you can start pummeling people behind the jab, you can intimidate them. And once you get them onto the ropes, learn how to turn your punches over more correctly, or at least more effectively. Anchor yourself to the canvas when you get fighters in a certain position and really go to town. That's what I'd like to see Joe Joyce doing. So, yeah, for me, it was a good performance. Again, don't be alarmed that this guy's getting cracked. He's slow. He's going to get cracked. He's aggressive. He's going to get cracked. But he has a great will. He has a great engine. He's very big, physically fit, determined, strong. And he did what he came to do, which was take out Bermane Stiverne. So, yeah, onwards and upwards for Joe Joyce. I do think it was a good move by his trainer, Abel Sanchez, to delay or swerve, some would say, the Luis Ortiz fight. I think Joe Joyce was getting a little ahead of himself when it comes to that kind of fight, because this right here did show Joyce, or it should have showed Joyce, that when you move up the level of opposition, you're going to start getting countered more, and you're going to start getting countered by people who can hit a lot harder than the previous fighters who he's fought so far as a professional. But I'm sure he knows what it's like to get hit hard. He was a highly decorated international amateur, sparred loads with AJ, was in the World Series of Boxing, so he knows what it's like to take a big punch from a big guy. But nonetheless, this might have served as a timely reminder to just tighten it up a little bit, just to be a little bit more defensively responsible. Don't go steaming in right away when you've got someone in front of you who can counter quite well. If he was to fight Luis Ortiz, that's the next level. Again, Ortiz is in much better shape than someone like a Bermane Stiverne, and he would be able to counter a lot more effectively and maybe catch Joe Joyce with shots that he wouldn't see and could potentially hurt him. So I think it was a good move by Abel Sanchez to pump the brakes on that a little bit, wait maybe 2 or 3 more fights before taking on an Ortiz. And to me, it's not at all ridiculous to entertain the possibility that Joe Joyce could beat Luis Ortiz 2 or 3 fights down the line. That's not ridiculous to me. Luis Ortiz is an old man. Okay? In the early rounds, if Joyce is pressing Ortiz, yeah, Ortiz is going to be dangerous. But once you get to 7, 8, 9, do you really think an old, tired Ortiz is going to like Joe Joyce constantly pressuring him, constantly backing him up to the ropes, putting 265 pounds of pressure on him? I don't think Ortiz would react to that very well. Yeah, he's an old man, and we saw him crumble in the Deontay Wilder fight, not just from Wilder's punches, but also from, I think, an element of fatigue in that fight. And he looked like a beaten man when he was on the canvas. He looked dejected. He looked like his spirit had been crushed. And I think Joe Joyce, in a few fights' time, he might be able to do a similar kind of thing to Luis Ortiz. Survive a few early scares, but impose his will on Ortiz down the stretch and maybe get him out of there late. To me, I would not be shocked by that. By the same token, I wouldn't be totally shocked if Ortiz beat Joe Joyce either. Okay, Ortiz is much faster, much sharper, but he's also not only much older, but much smaller. Do not underestimate how very, very big Joe Joyce is. Luis Ortiz is billed as 6'4". I would say closer to 6'3". He weighs, 235, 240 pounds. He'll be giving away over 25 pounds in weight to this man, Joe Joyce. All right. A huge specimen of a human being. Very strong, much younger than Ortiz. I think a lot more gas in the tank. So, yeah, I think Joe Joyce can still do well in the heavyweight division. I haven't been, deterred in my assessment of him. And I'm not saying he's going to be a world heavyweight champion necessarily, but I think he can mix it with the big boys down the line. They still need to work on a few things. He still needs to be a bit more responsible. But like I say, when you've got a guy who's that physically strong, who's that determined, who's that physically fit, and he's got that kind of will, you'd be surprised how far you can take someone like that, even when the competition is far more highly skilled than he is. So, and look, Joe Joyce is going to lose. I expect him to lose. He may well lose before he gets a shot at a world heavyweight title, but I believe he will come again. This is not the kind of person who's just going to lose one fight, at least not in my estimation, and call it a day. He's been doing this boxing game for a very, very long time as an amateur. He obviously loves the lifestyle. He has moved over to, or at least moved his training camp over to the United States, up in Big Bear, where it's really tough training at altitude, particularly for a 265-pound heavyweight. So this guy's serious. He loves boxing. He loves the life. And that's some formidable determination he's got there. So, yeah, I've said countless times in the past that Joe Joyce's style doesn't look like it should work, but it does. He is one of the most unattractive heavyweights stylistically. It's just ugly as hell. It looks novice-y, actually, the way he throws punches and his stance and all that. But somehow he keeps on winning. Somehow this guy was a highly decorated international amateur, did very well in the World Series of Boxing and beat people, by the way, like the highly touted Filip Hrgović. Oh yeah, you go watch that fight in the World Series of Boxing. Joe Joyce beat Filip Hrgović, somebody whose skills and ability are far more textbook. And look at the way that Joe Joyce walked that guy down and was able to take it to him. So don't underestimate him. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about Joe Joyce's performance against Bermane Stiverne. And has your perception of him changed? Did you expect him to just come in there and club Bermane Stiverne to the canvas without taking a punch back in anger? I didn't, but maybe you did. And if you did, then perhaps you were horrified, disturbed, shocked, disappointed perhaps that Joe Joyce was taking quite a few shots in the first round. But let me know how you guys felt about it in the comment section below. It's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.